Police officer slaps. Two veterans. 1 hour later, a Marine walks into the restaurant. Don't forget to comment which country you're watching from. It all began in a small roadside diner where two African-American veterans, James and Walter, sat at their usual table sipping coffee, just as they had done every week for years. They wore their military caps with pride, remembering the days when they had served their country with honor. But that morning, something changed. A local police officer walked in, his eyes filled with disdain as he headed straight toward their table. For no apparent reason, he demanded to see their IDs. James, calm but firm, replied, "Officer, we're just having coffee. We're Marine Corps veterans." The answer didn't sit well with him. The officer smirked, glancing around as if looking for approval. "Veterans, huh? Black heroes don't exist." The diner grew uncomfortably silent. Some customers lowered their eyes while others watched quietly. James tried to remain composed, but Walter's fists clenched under the table. The officer stepped closer and shoved James lightly on the shoulder. "Show me proof you're not a fraud." With effort, James pulled out his old, wrinkled military ID. The officer sneered, then tossed it to the floor. The silence was suffocating. Then, without warning, the officer raised his hand and slapped James across the face. James barely stayed on his feet. Walter jumped up instinctively, but the officer shoved him back down with a hit to the chest. "Sit down, old man. This isn't the war. I'm in charge here." James could hardly believe what was happening. Not the slap itself, but the cowardly silence surrounding him. After all they had given for their country, was this what they had become? The diner's manager nervously approached. "Officer, please, we don't want any trouble." But the cop waved her off. Trouble? These two are the trouble. Pretending to be patriots when they probably can't even spell their own names. Something broke inside James. It wasn't the slap. It wasn't even the humiliation. It was the pain of seeing decades of service reduced to nothing by one man's prejudice. Walter's chest heaved as he fought back tears. "We defended men like you," he muttered. The officer didn't stop. He grabbed James's coffee mug and smashed it onto the floor. "Get out of here before I arrest you for contempt." James looked at him with a mix of dignity and sorrow. Walter stood to help him. Then, from another table, an elderly woman rose, her voice trembling. "I marched in the protests of '68, and what I'm seeing today is just as shameful." The cop snapped, "Sit down, crazy old lady." James and Walter stumbled toward the exit. No one helped. Some customers stared out the window, others whispered, some held up their phones. But no one recorded. The silence was louder than any scream. At the door, the officer barked again. "And don't come back! This place isn't for you." Walter stopped, turned his head, and said, "This country wasn't for us either, but we still gave our lives for it." At that very moment, the front door swung open. A tall man in full Marine dress uniform stepped inside. His presence commanded instant respect. Every head turned. The officer didn't recognize him right away, but his life was about to change forever. It was Captain Andrew Collins, a decorated active-duty Marine who had served in the Corps' toughest missions. His stance radiated discipline, but his eyes burned with controlled fury. His boots echoed across the diner as he walked straight toward the officer. "Step back immediately," he ordered. The cop laughed nervously. "What's this? You giving me orders in your little parade outfit?" Collins didn't flinch. He pulled out his military ID, held it firmly in the officer's face, and said, "You just assaulted two war veterans. From now on, anything you say can and will be used against you, officer." Whispers filled the diner. Customers who had been silent now pulled out their phones to record. The officer, blinded by arrogance, shoved Collins with his shoulder. "I'm the law here. You're just an actor with fake medals." Collins didn't move an inch. His voice cut like steel. "This uniform was earned while watching my men die in Iraq. Meanwhile, you were probably hiding behind a desk with a rusty pistol." The words hit harder than any slap. The officer faltered, his pride pierced. James, from the doorway, could hardly believe someone was finally standing up to the man who had humiliated them. And then, it happened. Walter collapsed. The weight of stress, shame, and age overwhelmed him. James screamed his name and fell beside him. Some customers rushed to help, but Collins was faster. He knelt by Walter, cradling his head, giving calm instructions and calling for an ambulance. The officer stepped back, rattled. "This wasn't my fault," he muttered, but no one listened. Collins stood, his voice now laced with disgust. "You know what the worst part is? People like you wear the uniform as an excuse to abuse. Men like them wore it to protect this country. You are a disgrace to every force." The cop lowered his eyes. There were no laughs, no smirks, no support, only judgment. The manager stepped forward, her tone firm. "Leave this place. Now." Minutes later, paramedics arrived. Walter was stabilized and rushed to the hospital, James and Collins by his side. On the way, Collins held James's hand. "I won't let this go. I swear by the next day the story was on every local news channel, thanks to the videos recorded by witnesses." The officer was suspended. An internal investigation launched for misconduct and abuse of power. The police department issued a public apology to the veterans. But the most powerful moment came a week later. The diner's patrons organized a tribute for James and Walter. The community gathered to honor them as true heroes. Collins took the floor. "Today, we honor two men who not only served their country with courage, but reminded us of a dignity many have forgotten." James, tears streaming down his face, received a symbolic medal from the community. Walter, still recovering, joined via video call, his smile reflecting decades of struggle. They were no longer alone. That day, the diner placed a permanent plaque on the main wall. "Two heroes had breakfast here. They will never be forgotten." The owner, who hadn't been present during the incident, apologized in person and promised free breakfast for life to all veterans. James shook his hand firmly and said, "We don't want pity, just respect. That's all we ever asked for." The diner erupted in applause, because sometimes the most powerful truth hides behind a single sentence. You never know who's behind the mask